The stars outside the viewport looked cold and distant as Commander Jake stood on the observation deck of Orbital Station. He had been in space for 15 years, but he had never seen a station quite like this one. It was massive, built from dark metal that seemed to swallow light rather than reflect it. 12 different alien species came here to trade and talk politics. Humans were still new to this part of the galaxy, and Jake had been sent to make a good impression. His guide was a named Pretor, a tall creature with pale blue skin and 4 eyes that never seemed to blink. They controlled this station and most of the trade routes in this sector. They were powerful, wealthy, and very proud of both facts. "You will find our station most efficient," said in a voice that sounded like wind through dry leaves. "We have eliminated all unnecessary elements. Everything here serves a purpose." Jake nodded politely. He had learned that diplomacy meant smiling even when something felt wrong, and something did feel wrong about this place. The corridors were too quiet. The workers they passed kept their heads down and moved quickly, like people who had learned not to draw attention to themselves. The tour lasted 3 hours, showed him the trading halls, the diplomatic chambers, the medical facilities, and the entertainment district. Everything was clean and orderly and somehow lifeless. When they passed a heavy door marked with symbols Jake did not recognize, he paused. "What is down there?" he asked. Did not look at the door. Storage, nothing of interest to our honored guest. Jake did not push the question. He had been trained to notice when someone was lying and was definitely lying. But he was also a guest here, and guests did not go poking into places they were told to avoid. At least, not during the day. That night Jake could not sleep. His quarters were comfortable enough, but his mind kept returning to that door, and the way had refused to look at it. He lay in bed and stared at the ceiling, listening to the soft hum of the station's systems. Then he heard it. At first, he thought it was the ventilation system making a strange noise. But as he listened more carefully, he realized it was something else. It was a voice, not speaking words but making a sound that he could only describe as grief-given form. It was a low, keening wail that rose and fell like waves of sorrow crashing against rocks. The sound was so full of pain that Jake felt his chest tighten just from hearing it. He got out of bed and pressed his ear against the wall. The sound was coming from somewhere below him, somewhere in the direction of that forbidden door. Jake knew he should go back to bed. He knew he should mind his own business and complete his mission and go home. But there was something in that sound that would not let him rest. It was the sound of someone who had given up hope, someone who cried out not because they expected an answer, but because the pain was too great to hold inside. He got dressed and left his quarters. The station was different at night. The lights were dimmed, and most of the corridors were empty. Jake moved carefully, staying close to the walls and pausing at every corner to make sure no one was watching. He had done this kind of thing before during the war, when he had served in places where asking permission meant never getting answers. He found the forbidden door after 20 minutes of searching. It was guarded by a single soldier who looked bored and tired. Jake watched from the shadows for a while, then noticed a maintenance hatch nearby. Old habits from his military days took over. He found an alternate route through service tunnels that smelled like machine oil and recycled air. The tunnels led him to a that did not appear on any of the maps had shown him. The walls here were older, the metal stained and pitted. Warning symbols were painted everywhere, symbols that Jake could not read but which clearly meant danger. The wailing was louder now. He followed the sound to a long corridor lined with cells. Most of them were empty, their doors hanging open like mouths frozen in silent screams. But at the very end of the corridor, behind a door covered in glowing symbols, something was alive. Jake approached slowly. The symbols on the door pulsed with a faint blue light, and he could feel a strange tingling sensation on his skin as he got closer. Some kind of energy barrier, he guessed, designed to keep whatever was inside from getting out. He looked through the small window in the door. The creature inside was about the size of a bear, with dark scales that shimmered with colors he had no names for. It had 6 limbs, and its body was covered in what looked like old scars. But it was the creature's eyes that made Jake catch his breath. They were large and amber-colored and filled with more sadness than he had ever seen in any living thing. The creature was crying. Tears ran down its face and dripped onto the floor, where they sizzled and evaporated against the cold metal. Its mouth was open, and from it came that terrible sound of grief that had drawn Jake here through the dark. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Jake did not know what to say. He did not even know if the creature could understand him. Then it spoke. "You should not be here." The voice was rough, like it had not been used in a very long time. The creature spoke in common, the trade language used throughout the galaxy, but its accent was strange and old. "They will punish you too." Jake swallowed hard. "Who are you?" The creature closed its eyes and fresh tears spilled down its face. "I am Ka. I am the one they call the Abomination. I have been here for 19 cycles, and you are the first person who has come to see me without wanting to hurt me." Jake felt something shift inside him. He had seen many terrible things in his life. He had seen war and death and cruelty in forms that still gave him nightmares. But there was something about this creature, this Ka, that broke through all his defenses. "Why did they put you here?" he asked. Ka opened her eyes and looked at him with an expression that was somehow both hopeless and grateful. "Because they were afraid of what I am. Because fear is easier than understanding. Because no one ever asked that question before you." Jake placed his hand against the cold surface of the door. On the other side, Ka placed one of her clawed hands in the same spot, separated from him by metal and energy and 19 years of forgotten suffering. "I am asking now," Jake said quietly, "and I am listening." Jake returned to the Forbidden 3 more times over the following week. Each visit was a risk. They were watching him more closely now, and he had noticed security patrols passing by his quarters at odd hours. But he could not stay away. Every night, when the station grew quiet, he found himself walking through those dark service tunnels to sit outside Ka's cell. On his second visit, he brought water. On his third, he brought food that he had saved from his own meals. Ka accepted these gifts with a kind of wonder that hurt Jake to see. She held the water container like it was something precious, and drank so slowly that he realized she had probably been given only the bare minimum to keep her alive. "Why do you come back?" she asked him on the 4th night. Her voice was stronger now, though still rough from years of disuse. "You owe me nothing. Your people do not even know mine exist." Jake sat with his back against the wall opposite her cell door. The energy barrier hummed between them, but it no longer felt like such an impossible distance. "I keep thinking about that sound you were making," he said. "That crying. I have heard a lot of sad sounds in my life, but nothing like that. It sounded like you were carrying the weight of an entire world on your shoulders." Ka was quiet for a long time. Then she began to speak, and Jake listened without interrupting as she told him the story of her people. They had lived on the same world as for thousands of years. They were a peaceful species, smaller in number but deeply respected. This was because they had a gift that no other species possessed. They could sense the emotional pain of others, and more than that, they could take it away. "We would draw the suffering into ourselves," Ka explained. "A mother who lost her child, a soldier haunted by war, a leader crushed by guilt. They would come to us and we would take their pain. We would hold it inside ourselves until we could process it and let it go. It was our purpose, our calling." Jake tried to imagine what that would be like, to feel not just your own sadness but the sadness of everyone around you, to choose to carry that burden for others. "That sounds like a beautiful gift," he said. "It was," Ka said. "For many generations it was beautiful, but then the fear came." She told him how it started slowly. Rumors began to spread among that they were not really healers but manipulators, that they did not just take pain away but could also put it back. that they could control minds and feed on suffering like parasites feeding on blood. None of it was true, Ka said, and her voice cracked with old anger. We could not control anyone. We could not force our gift on those who did not want it, but truth does not matter when fear takes hold. Fear spreads faster than truth. Fear is louder. The persecution began with laws that limited where could live and work. Then came the accusations, the trials, the executions. Ka's parents were killed when she was young, dragged from their home by a mob that believed they had caused a plague that was actually just a natural sickness. She survived by hiding, by running, by learning to suppress her gift so completely that she became invisible. But eventually they found her. A scientist named captured me, she said. The name came out like poison. He did not want to kill me. He wanted to study me. He believed my abilities could be turned into a weapon. He thought if he could understand how I took pain away, he could learn how to give it, how to break enemies without ever touching them. Jake felt cold despite the warmth of the service tunnels. He wanted you to hurt people. He wanted me to destroy people, to reach into their minds and fill them with every terrible feeling I had ever absorbed, to drive armies mad with despair. Ka's amber eyes met his through the window. I refused. I told him I would rather die than become that. So he put me here and erased all records of my existence. I have been here for 19 cycles, alone, forgotten, with no one to speak to and nothing to do but absorb the ambient misery of this station. Jake did not understand that last part. What do you mean, absorb the misery? Ka pressed her hand against the barrier. My gift does not stop working just because I am locked away. I can feel everyone on this station, every worker who hates their life, every soldier who regrets what they have done, every diplomat who lies and knows they are lying. Their pain flows into me whether I want it or not, and I have no way to let it go, no way to process it. It just builds and builds, and I cannot stop it, and I cannot escape it, and every day I drown a little more. She was crying again, those strange tears that sizzled when they hit the ground. Jake wanted to reach through the barrier and hold her, but all he could do was press his own hand against the door in the same place as hers. I am so tired, Ka whispered. I have been tired for so long. I used to hope that someone would come, that someone would see me and understand. But after so many years, hope becomes another kind of pain. It is easier to believe that no one will ever care. Jake thought about everything she had told him. He thought about thee and their fear, their cruelty, their willingness to destroy an entire species because they did not understand them. He thought about who had seen a healer and wanted to make her into a weapon. He thought about 19 years of darkness and silence and unending sorrow. And then he made a decision. Ka, he said, and his voice was steady even though his heart was pounding. I need you to listen to me. I am going to get you out of here. I do not know how yet and I do not know when, but I am not going to leave you in this cell to die. Do you understand me? She stared at him like he had just spoken in a language she had never heard before. You cannot. They will kill you. They will never let me go. Then I will not ask their permission. Jake stood up and looked at her through the window. On my world, we have a saying. The measure of a people is how they treat those who cannot fight back. Your people knew that. They spent their lives helping others carry their pain. They forgot that and they let fear make them into monsters. But I have not forgotten, and I will not let humanity forget either. He could see the hope flickering back to life in her eyes, fragile and uncertain but real. He could also see how afraid she was to let herself feel it. Why, she asked, why would you risk everything for me? You do not even know me. Jake smiled, though there was no humor in it. Because someone should have come for you a long time ago, because no one should have to suffer alone, and because when I look at you, I do not see a monster. I see someone who has spent her whole life taking care of others. It is time someone took care of you. He left her there that night, but he left her with something she had not had in 19 years. He left her with hope. Jake called a meeting in his quarters aboard the Wayward Star, which was docked at the outer ring of the station. He invited only 2 people, his pilot, Danny Vance and his medic, Marsh. They were the only crew members he trusted completely, and he would need their help for what came next. Danny was a young man with messy brown hair and a reputation for being able to fly anything with an engine. He had grown up on a colony world where asking too many questions got you in trouble, so he had learned to think fast and act faster. Was older, with gray streaks in her dark hair and steady hands that had saved more lives than she could count. She had served as a combat medic during the border wars and had seen enough suffering to last several lifetimes. Jake told them everything. He told them about the Forbidden, about Ka, about thee, and what had been done to them. He told them about and the weapons research. He told them about 19 years of isolation and pain. When he finished, Danny let out a long breath. "That is the worst thing I have ever heard," he said, "and I grew up hearing some pretty bad things." His face was pale, but her eyes were hard. "What are we going to do about it?" "I am going to get her out," Jake said, "but I need your help. If you want to walk away, I will understand. This is not your fight." Danny laughed, though there was no humor in it. "Commander, I have been flying for you for 6 years. I have followed you into asteroid fields and through war zones and once into a star's corona because you had a hunch about a distress signal. If you think I am walking away from this, you do not know me at all." Nodded. "I became a medic because I could not stand watching people suffer. You are telling me there is someone on this station who has been suffering for 19 years and no one has helped her. Of course I am in. What do you need?" Jake felt something warm spread through his chest. He had hoped they would agree, but hearing them say it out loud made him realize how much he had needed their support. "First, I need to figure out how to do this legally, or at least legally enough that they cannot just blow us out of the sky the moment we try to leave." He spent the next 2 days researching. He read through every diplomatic agreement between humanity and the Galactic Concord. He studied trade laws and asylum protocols and prisoner transfer regulations. And finally, buried in an old document that dated back to Earth's first contact with alien species, he found what he was looking for. The right of sanctuary. It was an old law, written by human diplomats who remembered their own history. There had been a time on Earth when refugees were turned away at borders, when people fleeing persecution were sent back to die because no one wanted to take responsibility for them. The humans who wrote the galactic treaties had sworn that would never happen again. They had included a clause that said any being who requested protection from a human vessel on grounds of persecution could be granted temporary asylum. The request would then be heard by a formal tribunal, and until the tribunal made a decision, the being could not be forcibly removed. It was not a perfect solution. The tribunal might rule against Ka. They might find some way to invalidate the claim, but it would buy them time, and more importantly, it would put the entire situation into the public record. They could not make Ka disappear if the whole galaxy was watching. Jake requested a formal meeting with High Arbiter. The meeting took place in a diplomatic chamber on the station's upper level. The room was designed to intimidate, with high ceilings and walls covered in symbols of power. Sat behind a desk made of some kind of black stone, his 4 eyes fixed on Jake with undisguised contempt. "Commander," said, "I understand you have been wandering into restricted areas of my station." Jake kept his face neutral. "I have been exploring, as any curious visitor might." "Curious visitors do not bribe dock workers and sneak through service tunnels." His voice was cold. "You have seen something you should not have seen. I am willing to forget this incident if you leave immediately and never speak of it again." "I am afraid I cannot do that." Jake placed a data pad on the desk between them. "I am formally invoking the right of sanctuary on behalf of the being you are holding in your detention. Under Galactic Concord law, you are required to release her into my custody pending a formal tribunal." His eyes narrowed. For a moment Jake thought the alien might simply have him killed right there, but then laughed, a dry and unpleasant sound. "You have no idea what you are dealing with," said. That creature is not a refugee. She is a weapon. Her species could drive entire populations mad with a single thought. She is the most dangerous being in this sector, and you want to put her on your ship. I have spoken with her. She has done nothing but cry and ask why no one ever came for her. She is not a weapon. She is a victim. She is deceiving you, leaned forward. They are master manipulators. They make you feel sorry for them. They make you trust them. And then they destroy you from the inside out. She has been working on you from the moment you walked into that cell. Jake thought about Ka's amber eyes, filled with so much pain. He thought about the way she had warned him to leave, had tried to protect him even though he was a stranger. He thought about 19 years of solitude and silence. No, he said quietly, she has not. His expression hardened. If you proceed with this claim, you will be declaring yourself an enemy of the hegemony. We will revoke all trade agreements with Earth. We will close our borders to human vessels. We will make your species regret the day they decided to interfere in matters that do not concern them. Jake stood up. High Arbiter, I have listened to your threats. Now I want you to listen to mine. I am going to take Ka off this station. I am going to bring her story to the Galactic Concord. And when they see what you have done, when they see the records I have gathered and the testimony I will present, they will have to make a choice. They will have to decide whether the hegemony is really the kind of partner they want. He picked up the data pad. You can try to stop me. You can threaten war and sanctions and whatever else you want. But I want you to know something. On my world, we have seen what happens when good people stay silent in the face of injustice. We have seen how fear can poison entire societies. And we have learned the hard way that the only way to stop evil is to stand up to it, even when standing up seems impossible. Jake walked toward the door, then paused and looked back. You called her a monster, but I have sat with her for hours, and all I have seen is a healer who was punished for being different. If that is your definition of a monster, then your species has forgotten what the word means. He left the chamber without waiting for a response. That night, Jake gathered his crew and laid out the plan. They had 72 hours before the tribunal request would be formally processed. 72 hours before they could legally block the transfer. They would have to move fast. Danny, I need you to prep the ship for an emergency departure. I need you to put together a medical kit, something portable. She has been in that cell for 19 years without proper care. Danny grinned. So we are really doing this? Jake nodded. We are really doing this. Was already heading for the medical bay. I will be ready in 2 hours. Jake looked out the viewport at the dark metal of the station, at the lights blinking in the distance, at the stars beyond. Somewhere down there, in a forgotten cell, Ka was waiting. She had been waiting for 19 years. She would not have to wait much longer. The plan was simple, which meant everything could go wrong in 1,000 different ways. Jake had learned a long time ago that the best plans were the ones with the fewest moving parts. This plan had 3: a distraction, an extraction, and an escape. If any one of them failed, they would all probably die. Danny was in charge of the distraction. His job was to create enough chaos to draw security away from the detention without actually hurting anyone. He spent most of the night studying the station's schematics, looking for weak points in the infrastructure. The plasma venting system, he said finally, pointing at a section of the docking ring. If I trigger a controlled release near Bay 7, the automatic safety protocols will kick in. Every guard on the station will be pulled to emergency positions. It will look like an accident, and by the time they figure out it was deliberate, we will be gone. Was in charge of the extraction. She had assembled a portable medical kit with everything she might need, plus a barrier disruptor that Danny had acquired through channels Jake decided not to ask about. Her job was to reach Ka's cell during the chaos, get her out, and bring her to the ship. I have studied the route, said. I can get to thee in 12 minutes if the corridors are clear. Another 5 to disable the barrier and get her moving. She has been confined for a long time, so she might not be able to walk on her own. I will carry her if I have to. Jake was in charge of buying them time. He had filed a formal diplomatic objection to his refusal to acknowledge the right of sanctuary. Under Concord law, the objection had to be heard in full before any action could be taken. It was a stalling tactic, but it might give them the minutes they needed. They executed the plan at 300 station time, when the night cycle was at its deepest and the corridors were at their emptiest. Danny went first. He moved through the service tunnels to the plasma venting system and carefully triggered the controlled release. Alarms started screaming almost immediately. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and Jake could hear the pounding of boots as security teams rushed toward the docking ring. Jake walked calmly to the diplomatic chamber where was waiting. The High Arbiter looked furious, his 4 eyes blazing with anger. "This is your doing," hissed. "I do not know what you mean," Jake said. "I am simply here to present my formal objection, as is my right under Concord law. Your ship's pilot is not on board, we have checked." Jake smiled. "I believe he went to get some food. The station's offerings have been quite good." His hands clenched into fists. "If you think this little distraction will help you, you are wrong. My guards will find your people, and when they do—" "High Arbiter," Jake interrupted, "I have a formal objection to present. Under Section 47 of the Concord Charter, you are required to hear it in full before taking any action. Would you like me to begin, or shall we discuss where my pilot might be getting dinner?" For the next 30 minutes, Jake spoke. He cited regulations. He quoted precedents. He referenced cases from 100 years ago that had nothing to do with anything but sounded important. He talked about the philosophical underpinnings of asylum law and the historical context of the right of sanctuary. He talked about anything and everything he could think of to keep in that room. Meanwhile, the corridors were empty, just as Danny had predicted. Every guard on the station had been pulled to the docking ring to deal with the plasma emergency. Moved through the service tunnels at a dead sprint, her medical kit bouncing against her back. She reached the detention in 11 minutes. The door to the forbidden area was unlocked, its guards having abandoned their posts to respond to the crisis. She ran down the corridor of empty cells until she reached the one at the end, the one covered in glowing symbols. Ka was pressed against the back wall, her amber eyes wide with fear. "What is happening?" I felt something, a sudden burst of panic from everyone on the station. "My name is," said, pulling out the barrier disruptor. "I am a friend of Commander. We are getting you out of here." The barrier flickered and died as the disruptor did its work. Stepped into the cell and got her first real look at Ka. The alien was in worse shape than she had expected. Her scales were dull and cracked in places. Her muscles had wasted from years of confinement. And there was something in her eyes that recognized from her years as a combat medic. It was the look of someone who had been hurt so badly and for so long that they had forgotten what it felt like to be whole. "Can you walk?" asked. Ka tried to stand and nearly collapsed. Caught her, feeling the alien's weight against her shoulder. She was lighter than had expected, which was not a good sign. "I have you," said. "Just hold on to me. We are almost home." They made it back through the service tunnels in 22 minutes. Danny was waiting for them at the docking bay, the Wayward Star's engines already humming with power. He helped carry Ka up the ramp and into the medical bay. "Where is the commander?" asked. "Still with. He told me to launch the moment you were aboard." "We cannot leave without him." "He said you would say that," Danny grinned. "He also said to tell you he has a plan." In the diplomatic chamber, Jake had run out of things to say. Was staring at him with murder in his eyes, and the door had just burst open to admit a squad of armed guards. "Commander," said coldly, "you are under arrest for theft of property and conspiracy too." "Before you finish that sentence," Jake said, "I should inform you that I have activated a priority broadcast to the Galactic Concord. Everything that happens in this room for the next hour will be transmitted directly to every member world, including whatever you are about to do to me. Froze, the guards looked uncertain. You would not dare, said. I already have. Jake held up a small device. This is a diplomatic recorder, standard issue for all human ambassadors. It has been running since I walked into this room. The Conquered has heard every word you have said, including your admission that you have been holding a sentient being in secret detention for 19 years. That creature is not a sentient being. It is a danger to. The tribunal will decide that, not you. Jake put the recorder in his pocket. Now you can arrest me. You can hold me here and make an example of me, but my ship has already left the station with Ka aboard, and the whole galaxy knows what you have done. Is your revenge on me worth the political cost? For a long, terrible moment, Jake thought was going to have him killed anyway. He could see the calculation in the alien's 4 eyes, the weighing of options. Then made a small gesture, and the guards lowered their weapons. Get out, said. Get off my station, and know that the hegemony will never forget this insult. Jake walked out of the chamber with his head held high. A shuttle was waiting for him at the docking bay, and 15 minutes later, he was aboard the wayward star as it jumped to faster-than-light speed. He found Ka in the medical bay, lying on a bed with monitoring her vital signs. She looked up as he entered, and for the first time, he saw her smile. You came for me, she whispered. You really came for me. Jake sat down beside her and took her hand. Her scales were rough against his skin, but he did not mind. I told you I would. Why? She asked, and it was the same question she had asked him before, but now there were tears in her eyes. After everything they told you about me, after all the danger you put yourself in. Why? Jake thought about the question for a moment. Then he said, because on Earth, we have learned something that they seem to have forgotten. We have learned that the measure of a people is not how they treat their friends. It is how they treat those who cannot fight back, those who are different, those who are alone and afraid and have no one to speak for them. He squeezed her hand gently. You spent your whole life taking other people's pain. You gave them peace, even when it cost you everything. It was time someone did the same for you. Ka closed her eyes, and for the first time in 19 years, she slept without dreaming of darkness. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. A human crew had the hegemony. They had rescued a prisoner from a secret detention facility and fled with her aboard their ship. Some called them heroes. Others called them criminals. Everyone had an opinion. They responded with fury. They closed their borders to all human vessels. They revoked trade agreements and diplomatic privileges. They demanded that the Galactic Conquered condemn humanity for what they called an act of unprovoked aggression. But the recording from Jake's diplomatic device had already been distributed to every member world. The whole galaxy had heard admit that Ka had been held for 19 years without trial. They had heard him describe her as property rather than a person. They had heard the contempt in his voice when he spoke about thee and what he had wanted to do with their gifts. Not everyone cared. Some species had their own reasons to stay on good terms with the, but others started asking questions. If they had done this to the, what else had they done? What other secrets were hidden in their stations and on their worlds? The Galactic Conquered convened an emergency session to address the crisis. Representatives from 40 species gathered in the Great Assembly Hall on the neutral world of Consensus Prime. They sent their most experienced diplomats. Humanity sent Jake. Jake stood before the assembly with Ka beside him. She was stronger now than she had been when they rescued her, though had told him privately that the damage to her body was severe. Years of absorbing pain without any way to release it had burned out parts of her nervous system. She might have months to live. She might have years, but she would never fully recover. Ka had accepted this news with a calm that Jake found heartbreaking. I have lived longer than I ever expected to, she had told him. Every day since you found me has been a gift. I will not waste it on fear. Now she stood before the assembly, her amber eyes moving slowly across the gathered representatives. The delegation sat in stony silence, their expressions unreadable. High Arbiter rose to speak. "This tribunal is a farce," he declared. "The creature standing before you is a weapon of mass destruction. Her species could manipulate minds and emotions. They could drive entire populations to madness. We confined her for the safety of the galaxy, and this human has unleashed her for reasons we can only assume are sinister." "I have a question," Jake said calmly. "If she is so dangerous, why is she not controlling all of us right now? We have been standing here for an hour. She has done nothing but listen." "Because she is waiting for the right moment. Because she is deceiving you. Because you are lying." Jake's voice cut through words like a blade. "You know the truth, Arbiter. You know exactly what the can and cannot do. You studied them for years. You tried to turn their gift into a weapon. And when Ka refused to help you, you locked her away and erased her from history." His face twisted with rage. "You know nothing about." "I know what she told me, but I thought the Assembly might want to hear it from someone other than the accused." Jake turned to Ka. "You said your gift lets you feel the pain of others. Does it also let you understand where that pain comes from?" Ka nodded slowly. "When I absorb someone's suffering, I also absorb the memory of what caused it, not in detail but in feeling. I know the shape of their guilt, the weight of their secrets." "And during your 19 years on that station, did you absorb pain from the who worked there?" "Yes." Ka's voice was quiet but steady. "From everyone. The guards who hated their jobs, the workers who knew they were part of something wrong, and from the leaders who came to the station for other business but carried their own darkness with them." Jake looked at, "Including High Arbiter." "Including him," Ka turned to face directly. "I know what you did to the colony on 4. I know about the experiments. I know about the children." The chamber went silent. His face had turned pale, his 4 eyes wide with shock and fear. "I know about the alliance with the mercenaries," Ka continued. "I know about the bribes to conquered officials. I know about the assassination of Ambassador, who was going to expose your crimes. I have carried the guilt of these things inside me for years, and I have never spoken of them because I had no one to tell." She paused and looked around the chamber at the horrified faces of the assembled representatives. "I am not telling you this to hurt anyone. I am telling you this because the truth matters. For 19 years I was called a monster. I was locked away and forgotten because my people had a gift that frightened those in power. But I never hurt anyone. I never controlled anyone. I only tried to help them carry their pain." Ka's voice broke, but she kept speaking. "The real monsters are not the ones who can feel what others feel. The real monsters are the ones who choose not to, the ones who see suffering and look away, the ones who create pain and pretend it does not exist." The chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives were shouting, demanding investigations, calling for arrest. The delegation tried to leave, but security forces blocked their path. Within hours, formal charges had been filed against and several other high-ranking officials. Over the following weeks, the political landscape of the galaxy shifted. 3 species formally from their trade agreements with the hegemony. 2 more demanded reparations for past crimes that Ka's testimony had revealed. The conquered launched an investigation into the persecution of the, which uncovered evidence of systematic genocide that had been covered up for generations. Through all of it, Ka stayed aboard the Wayward Star with Jake and his crew, monitored her health, and did what she could to make her comfortable. Danny taught her how to play card games and told her stories about Earth. Jake simply sat with her, talking about nothing important, giving her the companionship she had been for so long. On a quiet evening 3 months after the tribunal, Ka asked Jake to take her somewhere. She would not say where until they arrived. It was the old. The planet had been abandoned for generations. Its cities crumbled to ruins, its forests grown wild over the bones of a civilization. Jake landed the shuttle in what had once been a great plaza, now overgrown with blue-green vegetation. Ka walked slowly through the ruins, touching the stones with her clawed hands. "I have never been here," she said. "I was born after the Purge, on a refugee ship that jumped from system to system, always running. But I have felt this place in the memories of others, in the grief of my parents before they died, in the longing of every who knew they would never go home." She stopped at a spot where a great tree had grown through the floor of an ancient building. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, creating patterns of gold and green on the stone. "I would like to stay here," she said quietly. Jake did not understand at first. "Stay? You mean live here?" "No." Ka turned to face him, and he saw that her eyes were peaceful in a way they had never been before. "I mean stay. Forever. When I die, I would like to be buried here under this tree, beneath the sky my people never stopped dreaming about." Jake felt his throat tighten. He had known this moment was coming, had warned him that Ka's body was failing, that the damage was too severe to repair, but knowing did not make it easier. "You still have time," he said. "We can find treatments, we can." "I have had enough time." Ka took his hand. "You gave me something more precious than time, Jake. You gave me hope. You gave me family. You gave me the chance to speak my truth and be heard. That is more than I ever thought I would have." She passed quietly aboard the Wayward Star 2 weeks later, surrounded by the crew who had become her family. Her last words were to Jake, whispered so softly he had to lean close to hear them. "You saw me," she said, "not what they made me. Thank you for remembering I was alive." They buried her beneath the tree she had chosen, under an open sky filled with stars. Jake carved the tombstone himself, working for hours to get the words right in both English and the old script that Ka had taught him during their long talks. The inscription read, "Here lies Ka. She carried the pain of others so they would not have to. She was not a monster, she was a healer, and in the end she was loved." Jake stood by the grave for a long time after the others had returned to the ship. He thought about everything that had happened since that night when he first heard a sound of grief echoing through the ventilation system. He thought about fear and courage, about cruelty and compassion, about the terrible things people could do to each other, and the beautiful things they could do instead. And he thought about what it meant to be human, not special because of strength or technology or empire, special because of the capacity to see another being's pain and choose to help carry it. That was humanity's greatest gift, not the ability to conquer, but the ability to care. Jake touched the tombstone one last time, then walked back to his ship. There was still work to do. There were still people who needed help, beings who had been forgotten, voices that had been silenced. Ka had taught him that, and he would not let her lesson be forgotten.